Hey, everybody. Welcome to Odd and Untold, the podcast where we talk about all things strange and spooky. And this week, I'm going to be discussing some UFO sightings in my old stomping grounds of Brooklyn. I've done a few episodes on UFOs in the past. I talked about one UFO I had seen in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, the Black Triangle UFO. My son was on the show many, many episodes ago, and we talked about again, different set of UFOs we may have seen in Bay Ridge, and then some that we had seen out in Coney Island, Brooklyn. And then I did an episode about UFOs over Staten Island, where I'm currently living, which is adjacent to Brooklyn. It's been a hot minute since I've done UFOs on the show, so I thought I'd take a look at some Brooklyn UFOs. And just to clarify, when I say UFOs, I kind of mean it in the purest sense of the term, unidentified flying objects. These are things that have been seen either by me in the older episodes or my son or other people that I'm going to share with you tonight, unidentified. It doesn't mean alien spaceships from another galaxy. It doesn't mean interdimensional beings. It doesn't mean time travelers. It can mean anything. It can mean those things. It could also be secret military aircraft. It could be cases of mistaken identity, things in the sky, especially at night. Or if they're far away, it could be very hard to determine what they are. So they're unidentified, they're flying in the air, and they're objects. They're clearly objects that we're seeing, but we don't know what they are. So I don't want to be ambiguous about that. I don't make any claims to say that I'm seeing alien spaceships or I'm seeing extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings. I don't know what these things are. They're just weird things that I've seen in the sky, and I don't know what they are. They're unidentified. Or if you prefer the UAP terminology that's kind of been making the rounds lately, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Unidentified aerial phenomenon. You have that as well. Unidentified. We just or unknown aerial phenomenon. It's we don't know what they are. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There are some people who watch the show, and I get comments, usually angry emails, who think that I'm kind of claiming, staking down my claims and taking a hard line position on things. And I really try not to do that. I really try to leave things open to interpretation, whether it's my own experiences, whether it's experiences I'm reading on the show or from guests. And whether that's Bigfoot or ghosts or UFOs or anything unexplained, I try to leave wiggle room for that it might be a bear. And when I say, oh, this Bigfoot sighting, it could have been a bear. I'll get angry emails with people saying, you think everything's a bear? No, I'm not saying it was definitely a bear. I'm just saying this report is a little bit in that gray area, just enough where they didn't get a good enough look at something. It could have been a bear, or they hear something in the woods and it could have just been hoaxers, or it could have been something else. I try to leave things open to interpretation and leave that wiggle room. So I really try not to say definitively this was a ghost or this was Bigfoot or this was an alien spacecraft. So keep that in mind when watching the show. I really try to just present what the stories are, present my experiences, present any guests' experiences or any experiences I'm reading on the show for what they are. And it's up to the viewer, to decide what you believe. Do you believe this person saw Bigfoot, or could it have been a bear? The angry email saying you think everything's a bear or there's no bear there. It doesn't matter if there's not bear known in that area. I mean, it's possible a bear could have wandered into that area. It's possible it was a homeless person. It's possible that it could have been any type of misidentification. How likely that is a very different story, and we can discuss that. But just keep in mind, anything I present here, I'm not saying definitively this is what it is. This is odd and untold. It's just strange things. We don't know what they are. Strange, spooky. It's all up for us to interpret what we've seen. If you've seen something and you are 100% sure of what you saw, that's great. That's on you. But people are going to question it. People are going to say, maybe you saw this, maybe you saw that. And again, depending on the story, depending on the circumstances, that could be warranted, and maybe it's not really warranted. Somebody seeing a glimpse of something dark moving through the woods and saying, I saw Bigfoot, that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. If you say, hey, I saw this giant 8-foot tall ape man and he had a stick and he was banging it against a tree, that story is a little bit more concrete. You can't say that was a bear, and I wouldn't. But the more ambiguous stories, I have to leave room for other possible explanations. So that's my little spiel on that. Just because I have been getting emails from people saying you think everything is a bear and you're discounting people's stories, and I'm really not. I've debunked my own experiences on the show. We've done entire episodes debunking my own experiences of things that I thought was a Bigfoot. So I will debunk my own stuff. So it's not, it's no disrespect to anybody. It's just we're here to analyze. We're here to give our opinions, and that's all they are, is opinions. We're not stating anything as fact. There are no facts. There are no experts. We all are just walking in the dark here and trying to find our way and trying to find answers. We're all on the same page, on the same team. Not necessarily the same page, but we're all on the same team. We're all looking for answers. We all want to find out what these things are. We all have different opinions. We all have different approaches, but we need to have that mutual respect and say, you do things a little differently than I do, but you're taking this road and I'm taking that road, but we're all trying to kind of meet in the middle there and find answers. So there's my spiel. On to the stories. Okay, so this week's stories, again, are coming to us from the National UFO Reporting Center, New Fork, if you want to give it a cool little nickname. This is going to be a shorter episode again this week. I'm still battling this lingering cough after my flu, and I'm not sleeping well, and too much talking makes me start coughing. So again, there's going to be some edits in here because I have to kind of cut and cough and take a drink. But this is kind of what we're looking at here. And I'm going to start with some stories from Brooklyn. And for anybody who's unfamiliar with the area, this right here on the western side is like the Bay Ridge, Sunset Park area. If you come down a little bit further south, this is Bensonhurst, Gravesend, all the way to the south here, this long, lengthy island here. This is Coney Island. So we're going to talk about a story from there. And then as you get kind of more into the center here, you're talking like Midwood and Marine Park, and then up here is downtown Brooklyn, which is actually in northern Brooklyn, but they call it downtown, I guess, because it's close to Manhattan. So I'm just going to be talking about a few stories from Brooklyn here, because I used to live in Bay Ridge, this little area right here. There's a report here from Bay Ridge, but it's so bare bones, I'm not even going to read it because it's it's just not interesting. If you guys want to check these out, I will put links in the description below, and you guys can go check it out and read the reports for yourself. But I checked that one out earlier, and it's really, it's like one sentence. It's not really worth talking about. It's not even an impressive sentence. So we'll be talking about Brooklyn areas that I'm very familiar with: Sunset Park, Bensonhurst, Dyker Heights, Coney Island, Gravesend, just areas that I grew up in. I had friends who lived in these neighborhoods, and we'd go walking in these neighborhoods, and friends who went to school in these neighborhoods. So spent a lot of time traveling throughout Brooklyn, and just wanted to talk about some of these UFO sightings. So let's get on to the first one. This one is going to be from Sunset Park. Okay, so this first report, like I said, from Sunset Park, this is from September 28th, 2013, two observers. Like I said, Sunset Park, which is a little bit north of Bay Ridge. The shape of the object was a circle, and characteristics were lights on the object. And I will just read this person's account. Stationary white lights rotating erratically in a circular formation inside of a cloud. I was driving in my car and came to a red light when I noticed about 3 white lights rotating in an erratic circular formation. At first, I thought it was some kind of searchlight, but we live in Brooklyn and there are no searchlights in Brooklyn. When my boyfriend saw it, he said it was probably a UFO because there were no beams of light. I thought that he was joking and I dismissed it, but as we got on the highway and continued to drive for another 15 minutes, we saw the same exact light rotating in the clouds with no sign of any beams. We'd already driven a significant amount of miles from where we originally saw the lights, so I began to wonder how we were still seeing them and why it seemed as if we were getting closer to it. I am a believer in extraterrestrial beings, so I began to believe that it was possibly that. That was exactly what we were witnessing. I decided to Google my sighting to see if anything similar would pop up, and I happened to read a report that was taken in 2010 in California, and the witness reported the same exact sighting as me. I find it hard to believe that what I saw was anything other than a UFO sighting, being that another witness reported the same exact sighting from all the way in California approximately 3 years ago. So let's just get one thing out of the way immediately. Uh, there are searchlights in Brooklyn. I mean, clubs will open up and you will see the searchlights. I mean, these aren't like military grade searchlights, but I grew up in Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn most of my life, and I've seen searchlights. I've seen the beams, and you see the lights on the clouds. And again, it's usually when a new store opens up or a club opens up. So let's throw that out right away. I'm not saying they didn't see a UFO. I'm just saying to say that there are no searchlights because they live in Brooklyn is a little silly, because I've seen searchlights many times growing up in Brooklyn. You don't see them often, but they are there, and it's very possible that they're there. Um, so with that out of the way, on the flip side of it, they're saying they saw no beams of light. Now, depending on atmospheric conditions, you may not always see the beams of light. They're in a car, they're driving, they could be far away. So maybe the beams were there, but a little faint. Again, if there's not enough uh, debris in the atmosphere, whether that's moisture or dust or fog or whatever, you may not see the beams. You may just see these things moving in the clouds. Uh, so, with the information provided here, I don't know what to make of this one. They're saying it was inside the clouds. Again, they don't really go into much more detail than that. Did the glow look like it was coming from inside the clouds, or did the lights appear to be on the clouds? Tough to call. Again, she's Googling a sighting to see something, and she found something in California 3 years earlier. I don't know. There's no link to that sighting, so I can't check on that one. I don't know which exact sighting she's referencing here. So again, it could have been anything. But it's stationary white lights rotating erratically in a circular formation. And that just kind of sounds like searchlights. It sounds like maybe a club or a new store was having a grand opening and they're just trying to attract attention. I don't know. But you guys can let me know what you think down below. They're not seeing an object, they're just seeing lights. So for me, again, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of falls into that ambiguous category because you're not seeing a craft. You're not seeing the actual metal or the structure. You're seeing lights in a cloud. And to me, that could be a helicopter hovering or a couple of helicopters hovering in a cloud bank or fog. Most likely it's searchlights, but an interesting report because it could go either way, but I'm leaning towards searchlights on this one. So you guys let me know what you think down below in the comments, and we will move on to our next story. Okay, so this next story is coming to us from Bensonhurst, and this is a neighborhood a little south of where we just talked about in Sunset Park and further east than Bay Ridge and north of Coney Island. So it's kind of in the middle of Brooklyn here. But we're going to talk about this sighting that happened in 1999. Okay, so this one is from February 21st of 1999. Looks like 1:30 in the morning. Duration 15 to 30 minutes in Bensonhurst. The shape was a light. Characteristics: lights on object, emitted other objects, and emitted beams. Interesting. So we'll see what this one's about. A bright light in the sky with a narrow line going down to the roof, etc. It read me and hid itself. What my grandma and I saw was unbelievable. The whole experience took anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. It was late at night, about 1:30 a.m. in 1999. I'm not 100% sure of the year or date, though, so approximate. We lived, myself and the family still does, in a one-bedroom apartment. The windows are facing the backyard and an abandoned building. But if you look out the window to the right, you can see a crack, which lets you see the buildings further down the block and a few blocks thereafter. So Brooklyn has lots of apartment buildings, and there's lots of little alleys, and sort of the way the buildings can be, you can kind of get like a little crack between them that you can see. So that's kind of what he's talking about. Not like an actual crack in the concrete, just kind of a little space between buildings that he could see through. That night, my grandma came over, so I gave up my living room bed and slept on the couch. Well, anyways, Granny wanted to go to sleep, so I turned off the lights. As I was heading to sleep, I passed the window and noticed a bright, strange-looking white light hovering above one of the apartment buildings further down the block. There wasn't much room to see, but I noticed it for the sole reason that it was so bright. At first, I figured it was some crazy helicopter, but it was absolutely silent, and it was so dark out that I could not see the structure of the object other than its lights. As I came closer to the window, I noticed that the light had a narrow but bright white line, like a beam, coming down from it to the roof of the building and right on top of the roof. This line was connected to something rotating on the roof in a circular motion. I couldn't tell what it was, but I could certainly tell that it was rotating extremely fast and violently. Right about then, I was thinking UFO. After about 5 minutes of glaring at the object, I went to find my binoculars so I could take a better look, but I had no luck as everyone was sleeping. Then I woke up my grandma, who was almost asleep, and told her to take a look at this unbelievable thing. Granny wanted to turn on the light so she could see it better, but that didn't help, so I turned the light right back off. Right after, the object's narrow, bright line swooped to our window and shined a light directly at us through our window for about 3 to 5 seconds. It felt like a helicopter shining its light at somebody on the street, except it was at least 1/7 to 1/8, a guess, of a mile away, much too far. Imagine a giant searchlight on the roof of a 5-story building shining at you directly through your window. I guess that meant it could probably tell that we were observing it because of the light switching. Well, anyways, it felt like the light was reading me. I was scared like hell and my hands started to shake. Right after, the narrow line came back to its initial position and, along with the rotating objects, appeared to have moved from the roof and into the bright light on top of them. Suddenly, the light slowly disappeared behind the building and I never saw it again. By the way, it was very possible for other people in my building to see this, but most of them were probably asleep. And oh yeah, one of my friends from high school tried to make me promise to never tell this experience to anyone ever again. After I told it to him, we are not friends anymore. Who knows why he asked me, but the fact that someone like that seriously told me never to give this info away is crazy. I have the freedom to say what's on my mind. Thank you for listening to my story. Please respond. I really want to know more about this strange occurrence. And there's no follow-up here. This one is a little bit more interesting to me. So most New Yorkers, no matter what borough you live in, we're used to helicopters with searchlights. It happens a lot. You have a criminal who is on the run, and the helicopters will swoop your neighborhood, and there's just searchlights. And I've had searchlights, in my like lighting up my backyard, and the searchlights are very bright. I mean, they'll make it look like day. So again, people in New York City, we are used to helicopters, searchlights, and the helicopters are loud. I mean, they're low at that point. They can't be too high up and be effective with the searchlight. So they fly low and you get the searchlights. This sounds really interesting. It's hovering over a building and there's a thin light beam kind of touching the rooftop of the building, and something there is rotating. Very strange. I don't know what to make of this. I mean, this sounds a lot like, you hear a lot of these UFO stories where a UFO is parked over water, usually a reservoir or a lake, and it's shining a beam into the water. And people don't know if it's analyzing the water, stealing the water, analyzing life in the water, fish or other marine life. But I've heard a lot of those stories about UFOs hovering above reservoirs and other water and shining like a beam of light into it. You also hear a lot of alien abduction stories where a light gets shined down and the person is brought up into it. Very interesting that the light swings and shines onto this guy in his apartment. Again, almost like it knew he was there and was like scanning him. So this one, if it's true, is really freaky and interesting. And again, I'm not saying this guy's a liar, but it's the internet and people will hoax and say things. I'm not saying that's what this is, but if we accept it's true, this is a freaky story. And this one is a little less ambiguous. It's a bright light over an apartment building, not making any noise, shining a light onto a roof, shining a light onto this guy, and then moving behind another building where he loses sight of it. This is not just a possible searchlight, in the clouds. This one is a little bit more on the money. Either this guy is making this up or he saw something truly strange. Again, doesn't mean it's alien or extraterrestrial, but saw something pretty strange. So this is a cool story. Just very, very spooky. And I don't think any of us seeing this would not be a little scared seeing this. This is a cool one. Okay, so the third story, this is coming from Coney Island, and it's a shorter story, but I bring it up because it's very similar to the account that my son and I shared from what we saw in Coney Island. And again, I don't know what to make of that. You guys can make of that what you will. But I thought this was interesting. So we will get into this story from Coney Island. So this one is from March 18th of 2009. The duration was 20 minutes, just one observer. He says he was, or she says they were at work on the third floor. It was cigar-shaped, brownish gray, about 2 to 3 city blocks. It was viewed from, that doesn't make sense, like he was in his building. Coney Island says it was probably about 200 to 300 feet away from them. Estimated speed, not moving. So they say, I watched the object from my window. I arrived at work at my normal time. As I looked out the window, I saw a large cigar-shaped object at a roughly 15 to 20 degree angle outside the building. It appeared not to be moving. The object made no sound. As I looked at the object for a moment or so, it seemed to drift. I seemed to drift in thought, as though I had moved a brief distance and returned. When I looked again, the object was gone. So he does mention here some missing time. And again, this report is not very detailed, so he's not saying how long the missing time was, but he says, as I looked at the object for a moment or so, I seemed to drift in thought, as though I had moved a brief distance and returned. So he's almost saying almost like he got beamed out of there and then beamed back. But he drifted in thought. And again, this could just be shock. I mean, we hear a lot of missing time from a lot of different phenomena. When people see something that is scary to them, unknown, like time seems to stop and your mind kind of races, like trying to figure out, what am I seeing? Like, I should not be seeing this. So I think the missing time is a little bit interesting. Again, my son and I saw something at a distance, and I would say it was more silver. He's saying a brownish gray. What we saw was a grayish silver. What we saw was maybe not cigar shaped, but like circular. It looked like a sphere almost. And we were in Coney Island. We were like right off the boardwalk, but we could see this object north. It was like over Brooklyn, and again, it was silent. It just kind of hung out there. It didn't really move, or if it did move, it was just little bits here and there. It didn't seem to be a helicopter. My vision's not as great as my son's. I believe my son saw more than one. I only saw the one, but we tried taking pictures of it, but the cell phone technology at the time, this is going back maybe 7, 8 years, we couldn't really get a good picture of it, but we tried. But very similar to what we saw. But Coney Island has a lot of weird stuff attached to it, and I'll link to an episode I did that mentions a flying humanoid at Coney Island. So I'll put that below as well, so you guys can check that out. Okay, so our next report is coming from like the Midwood section of Brooklyn. It's north of Coney Island, a little bit east of Bensonhurst. I spent a lot of time growing up in Midwood. Just had friends there, so spent a lot of time out there. So I will read this report from Midwood. Okay, so this one is from July 20th of the year 2000. 2 observers, location Ocean Parkway. I used to pass Ocean Parkway on the bus all the time. I'm familiar with this neighborhood. Like I said, spent a lot of time out in Midwood. The shape of the object was a chevron. So kind of almost like a V, like a very wide V, if you don't know what a chevron is. Characteristics: lights on object, emitted other objects, aircraft nearby. The report: lighted red chevron, maneuvering rapidly near Atlantic Ocean on southern side of Ocean Parkway, Long Island. This is technically Brooklyn, which Brooklyn is on Long Island, but it's not considered part of Long Island. So the report: early in the evening on July 20th, I was traveling with a friend eastbound on Ocean Parkway. Coincidentally, we were on our way to Robert Moses State Park for a sky observation session. The southern side of Ocean Parkway faces the Atlantic Ocean, consisting of a relatively small amount of undeveloped land. We had just passed a sign stating turtle nesting area next 6 miles. The beaches in the area are known for bird and animal nesting. Following, however, were a mass amount of do not enter and no stopping signs. Not unusual, but in a mass quantity for such a small area. As we continued, we noticed unmarked, darkly colored helicopters in the area, hovering over the southern side near the ocean. It was about 8 o'clock, 2000 hours, and we assumed the helicopters were watching traffic conditions, although it was rather late for rush hour and they displayed no markings. After leaving the observation session, we traveled westbound on Ocean Parkway. As we approached the Jones Beach area, we noticed a small red object on the southern side of the parkway. It appeared as a glowing red chevron. The ends were a darker red, but the center was lit up as though there were a bright white bulb inside. I had no perspective relating to the height of the object. It appeared as though it could be very small, about 15 feet above the ground. However, it could have been further out, possibly above the ocean, causing it to look small from our standpoint. We pulled the car over to the side of the road. As we watched, the object moved almost like a kite. It moved back and forth rapidly over a small area with no apparent travel direction. The object then dropped a white glowing bulb-like object and continued to glow red, but duller. Shortly after, the object descended, or fell out of the air. The event lasted for a minute and a half, which is when we continued travel down the road. We decided to turn around and look for any other activity. We took the next U-turn to find a car pulled over on the southern side of the parkway facing east. There was a man inside, and he watched us as we passed him by. He didn't seem to be doing anything that would warrant pulling over. There was no interior light on, no cigarette, no tire changing, no other passenger. He was gone the next time we drove by. After a couple of times passing the event area, we decided to head home. On our way, we saw many airplanes overhead. We looked carefully to make sure they weren't anything else. One such craft caught our attention. It had no obvious shape, as it was rather dark. We were traveling west on Ocean Parkway, and it appeared to be hovering and moving in a general southern direction. We would have assumed it to be a plane, but it would move, then hover, then change directions in a way that a regular plane would not be able to maneuver. Some information about the observers. I have never seen or claimed to have seen a, quote, UFO before this account. That's not to say that I don't believe. I do, but if I see something unusual, I tend to force myself to believe something for the sake of being able to say I've seen something. When I saw the helicopters, I didn't think much of it. When I saw the red object, I assumed it to be some kind of toy, maybe a lit-up toy plane or some kind of light-up kite. When the object fell out of it, I thought maybe that a light bulb fell out of the toy, so the user brought the toy down to fix it. When I saw the strange man, I figured he was pulled over for a reason. When I finally saw the strange flying object, I decided there was something wrong. Taken separately, the occurrences can be somewhat normal. However, when I put them together, the results fit together in a strange way and suggest some abnormal events. So this one's interesting. Again, you're talking about a very distinct sighting. It's not just some weird light in the sky. He's seeing a chevron-shaped object. It's lit up red. It's dropping something out of it. There's a man in a car. So did this guy pull over to also look at the object? Hard to say. This is in the year 2000. This is 24 years ago. Today, we'd easily say this was a drone, that maybe this guy in the car pulled over and was flying a drone and, taking footage or just having fun flying his drone. But they didn't see this guy doing anything really. And again, this could be a red herring. It could just, Brooklyn is a weird place and you see all sorts of weird things and people pulled over and doing all sorts of things. I don't know if it's related to this UFO or not. And again, I like that this guy admits that he couldn't really tell the size of this object. At night, especially when something is in the sky, it's hard to judge distance. Therefore, it can be very hard to judge size or speed. In the daytime, if something is very close to you and you can get a really good look at it, you can judge maybe how big it is or how far away from you it is. At night, if you're seeing a light way out there and it's moving and you're moving, these guys are driving, it could be very difficult to judge how big it is, where it is. Is it 100 feet away? Is it 1,000 feet away? You don't know. How high is it in the sky? Is it 20 feet or 200 feet? It could be any number of things. So I like that he admits that he just doesn't know. Sometimes people say, oh no, it's the size of a football field. And how do you know? It's nighttime, it's far away. So this one's interesting. And I liked this one because it dropped something out of it. And if you go back and watch my episode on the Black Triangle UFO that I saw over Bay Ridge, I watched that for about 48 minutes, I believe it was. And during that time, it dropped. It was very far away. Like, it was not a close object. I can't say how far away it was, but it was not close. But I could see this black triangle. And at a certain point, I forget at what point in my sighting this happened, but it was far into it, 20, 30 minutes. it dropped like these little sparkles out of it. And this is a daytime sighting. This is probably 9:30 in the morning, but I could see little sparkly things like falling out of it and then just fading. Like things came out of it, and then I don't know where they went. But it was just a weird thing. I don't know what it was. Again, helicopters make noise, even in the city where it's noisy. Like you can hear helicopters. You know, you see a helicopter, you hear it. That's just kind of the way it is. If you can't see it, you probably can't hear it, but you'll hear them more often than you'll see them. Like you'll hear the helicopter before you see it. Um, so not sure what to make of this one, but it sounds like a boomerang or a V-shaped UFO. It's red. Usually they're black. So that's interesting to me that this one was red. Could it have been a toy plane, and maybe a light bulb fell out of it? Sure. Light bulb probably wouldn't have stayed lit once it fell out. It maybe for a split second, but uh, this sounds like something lit fell out of it, and then the plane or the object itself got a little dimmer, but still stayed red. So I don't know what to make of this. I don't think drones were really popular or available back 24 years ago in the year 2000. Uh, but it could have been a remote control plane, but the way it moved doesn't really sound like it. So this is an interesting one to me. Okay, so the last story for tonight, I'm going to cut this short because my voice is starting to go on me. I've been talking too long. Looks like it's from the Flatbush Prospect Park area, so way north of Coney Island and due east of Sunset Park. So you have Prospect Park, which is a big park. I think it's like the biggest park in Brooklyn. Very cool place. But this one is from that area. Another short one, but I have some thoughts on it. So we will get into this story. Okay, so this one is from about 8:30 at night on June 10th of 1980. And location is Brooklyn. Like I said, probably around Prospect Park or Flatbush area. Those neighborhoods are adjacent. So it was a disc-shaped object, dark silver, estimated to be about 80 feet wide. Uh, Speed was slow, and there were lights on the object. So I'll read this one. 80-foot wide, lights on base, beings seen in ports. So this is interesting. Vessel rose up vertically about 200 feet from me. Then it tilted to the horizontal. It seemed to be motionless for about a minute. On the base hung a cupola with what appeared to be beings. The beings seemed to be moving around. Above that was a row of lights that stretched across the side I could see. It then slowly moved away from me in the direction of East 4th Street. It made no noise, and there was no disturbance in the air. So this is one of those weird reports where, and you hear these reports from time to time where people will see an object and they can kind of see in the portholes or the windows or the lights, and they'll see beings. They'll see something moving inside. I don't know how close this person was to the object. Again, the narrative here is a little thin. Not a lot of detail here. I wish they had written more. Doesn't say where he was. Number of observers, he says one, military. So I'm guessing that means this person was in the military. But the object rose, tilted, was motionless for about a minute. And on the base hung a cupola. Usually you get the flying saucer with, the cupolas on top. This is on the base, hung a cupola and what appeared to be beings. So almost like a blimp. It's silent. It's kind of hovering. Above was a row of lights that stretched across the side. It made no noise as it moved. I mean, a skeptic is going to say this is the Goodyear blimp. There were people just, it sounds like a blimp. But this guy is saying he was in the military. I don't know what to make of that. I would like to think that anyone who served in the military could recognize a blimp. We do have blimps in Brooklyn. I used to see them a lot as a kid. I've seen them as an adult. Not very close. They're usually out over the water. They don't usually go over land too much. Again, this narrative here is a little bare bones, doesn't really say much. It sounds like he saw a blimp, especially with the beings moving around inside. Or those just the pilots of the blimp? But it sounds like a blimp to me. Row of lights and the cupola sort of hanging on the bottom. Again, this could be a legit report. This guy saw something strange and is putting it out there. It could be somebody pranking us. It could be somebody just saying, I came across this UFO database and I'm going to, oh yeah, I saw, he's going to describe a blimp and be like, yeah, people are going to read this and be like, oh my God, this guy saw something. So again, we have to use some critical thinking here. Uh, to me, it sounds like a blimp. And if it's not a blimp, if this guy saw something actually bizarre, he's saying it was disc shaped, not cigar shaped. If he said cigar shaped, I might lean more towards blimp. I don't know what to make of this one. It's a weird one to end on because it could be a really cool sighting because there's beings and it's this weird disc shaped object with a couple on the bottom and could be very cool, or it could just be a blimp, or it could just be somebody pranking us and being silly on the internet, which happens way too much as I am learning. So yeah, there's your last story. All right, everybody. That's our show for this week. We've done some UFO stories from my old stomping grounds in Brooklyn. I hope you enjoyed some really cool stories, some kind of silly stories, some stories that were easily debunked. I will do more of these episodes in the future. There's a lot of cool stories in here. I love that they have a map and you can just kind of pick the story that you want to talk to based on location. So a very cool database. I will link to it down in the description below. If you guys have a story, if you've seen Bigfoot or UFO or ghosts, shoot me an email, jason@oddanduntold.com, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I'm trying to line up some guests, people who've emailed me. But again, with my cough right now, I can't, it's easier for me to do solo shows right now than to actually talk to somebody and have to stop every 5 minutes and cough and take a drink, and so annoying. I feel fine otherwise. It's just this lingering cough. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please give us a subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. Again, just be respectful. I love having the dialogue. So many of you have been great. Again, I get like the random angry email or comment that I'll have to, either delete or respond to and try to diffuse the situation, because I'm here for dialogue. I'm here to kind of work things out. But most of you have been very respectful, even if you disagree with me. And it's been really cool talking to you guys. So please continue to shoot me emails, leave comments. Make sure you subscribe. It really helps out our channel. Give likes to the videos. That helps the algorithm. Lets us know what you guys like, what you don't like. I mean, the Bigfoot stuff is just blowing up on this channel, but I don't want to become a Bigfoot channel. I love Bigfoot, but I also love ghosts and UFOs and other spooky stuff. So I will keep doing that, but give a thumbs up, give us a like if you like the video. Shoot us a subscribe, just so you know when new videos come out. Like I said, it helps the channel. If you're listening on an audio platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, please leave us a review. Doesn't have to be 5 stars. Just give us whatever you think we deserve. I'm not that type of person who says, please leave 5 stars. If you think I deserve 4, give me 4. If you think I get 1, give me 1. But the reviews help too. I appreciate feedback. If you could leave a comment there as well. Constructive criticism is always welcome. Like I said, just please be respectful to myself, to my guests, to my guest hosts, to people's stories that I'm reading on here. I try to, again, balance. I try to be fair and give both sides of the story. Some stories sound more like a blimp or more like searchlights. I'm not saying that's what they are. I'm just saying that's kind of superficially what things sound like. But who knows? I wasn't there, so I'm not going to make that determination. So, but until next time, everybody, question everything like I do here. I question my own accounts. I question my own experiences, question everything. And we will see you next week, everybody. Rock and roll.